to John P. Milton.
Well, hopefully that short video gives a little taste of the way of nature. As you can see in the presentation there, the focus is really on nature, meaning the world of outer nature and the whole huge family of living things of which we are a part. And then, of course, in our nature, the experience of your perceptions, your thoughts, your emotions, your experience of sadness, grief, and joy, and happiness. The whole world of inner nature and how it displays itself in your lifetimes. And then finally, the true nature aspect, which many different cultures define in different ways. It could be God, goddess. Maybe the word we've been using lately a lot is a kind of basic word that describes the underlying state out of which all the sacred images of Great Spirit arise. We often use the term source or sometimes the Great Mystery. But all three in the way of nature, we try to provide a pathway that helps you access that as a direct experience, not just as a philosophy. And one of the challenges in modern times particularly is we're raised and we live in situations and circumstances that are pretty novel and quite new for our species. Every cell in our body co-evolved in the body of the biosphere and the family of all living things over billions of years as life evolved. And eventually part of what life evolved into was us. But those cells that we're made up of still carry that original memory of being connected to the big family of all living things. So one of the things that we focus a lot on is making a much deeper connection to that family of all living things, the big family. And for just a little while, dropping the things that separate us and focusing on the things that connect us. And part of what helps us do that is having a very deep experience of solitude in nature. So you're not being trapped by names and words and images from culture and what you've been taught, but you can have direct experience beyond the words and the names and the different images that you've been educated about. You just have a direct experience of connection. And then in the case of inner nature, we found that the toolkit that we are born with are called sight, sound, touch, smell, taste, the experience of movement and balance, the experience of the energy flows in our being, and this fundamental experience of the flow of emotions and thoughts that often manifest in the context of how those other 7 fields of experience, I call them the 9 experiential fields, because really that's the birthright that we work with from birth to death in this experience of this lifetime. So a lot of our work is to refine those 9 experiential fields so they become a vehicle for deep connection, each one of them. And then you learn how to honor them as a totality. Then finally you learn how to follow the experience of those 9 fields back into the primordial awareness as the foundation or basis for each one of the fields. So instead of just looking out, you also follow, for example, back into where's this vision rising at the deepest level of your being? What is that field of primordial awareness that's the foundation for the experience of outer nature and inner nature both? And to do that, we have a little training before we do a program where we share the pathway of how you refine and begin to antidote what I call the grossification of perception. We have a tendency to make experiences stronger, louder, more intense, so we can feel something. So music gets louder, paintings get more and more brilliant and kind of shiny. Film begins to have more and more dramatic content to kind of grab our attention, maybe more violence, unfortunately. And I call that the process of the grossification of perception. And by that grossification process, you begin to dull and create an experience that's much more clouded. The reverse of that is to honor perception itself as a vehicle for deep and profound connection. And when you do that, you use very simple practices for doing that. You go through a series of stages, which each one of those fields of experience. First, you enter into what's blocking you from experiencing those 9 fields of experience. How can you begin to honor them and release any kind of contraction against really going into a deep embrace of those aspects of life? Then, as you begin to have much more direct and open experience, you're open to experiencing much more directly without a lot of thoughts. When you enter that, you begin to have experiences of true connectivity, maybe for the first time in many cases. And then you go deeper with that experience, and you may start having an experience of a kind of natural communion. That word is a beautiful word. It means union with. Union with what? Union with the essence of your being and the being that you're connecting to. So that being that you're connected to may be a tree, a flower, a beautiful sky, and a wonderful sunset, an image of the water flowing down a beautiful stream. Could be many things. But you have that sense of being in yourself. You're still an individuated being, but there's also that incredible experience of being bonded with this other being of nature that you've come into connection with. And especially if you drop the words and the language about branding something, you can experience directly and maybe mysteriously that being of nature. And if you go deep into the communion experience, many people begin to have experiences of unity where they and the being of nature, like a tree or a flower, become one being. So there's one instant of time where you and that being of nature are really one experience, one happening, one event. And it's completely non-dual. It's an experience of a deep and profound connection. Then if you've had that with many things surrounding you in your environment, you begin to have the experience of a kind of sacred wheel or sacred circle of all things that are surrounding you in nature. And we often call that the sphere of great nature, a natural experience of being bonded to a mandala of living things, where you've bonded so deeply that you're in a state of unity. And at that point, all of the beings of nature and you arise as one unified entity. That's an amazing experience if you're lucky enough to have had that experience in your lifetime. Then the invitation is to follow all of those fields of experience and the mandala experience back into that primordial consciousness that is your foundation and the foundation of everything else as well. And at that point, you begin to taste a much deeper level of opening to source itself. And of course, that's a very, very liberating experience if you can have an authentic experience of tasting absolutely pure, pristine, primordial awareness, a kind of formless state that is the foundational consciousness out of which all of these experiential forms arise. And that's extremely liberating. It also is extremely bonding. You begin to realize that as part of the family of all living things, you share at the root that beingness. All living things share that. I should say that I began to open this pathway that I just described because as one of the fathers of the environmental movement, I was helpful in getting a lot of legislation and things that Brad mentioned, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Environmental Policy Act, Endangered Species Act. Many of these things came out of the work in the 60s. But I realized after a while that all of these things were subject to change if a new governmental group came in and decided they were going to get rid of all that. It became pretty evident that all of this good work was deeply at risk if there was not a cultural foundation that really honored nature and the connection between inner and outer nature in a very deep and profound way, in a spiritual way. So that led me to begin to offer and pull together the process we now call the way of nature. And it's continued to kind of grow and flourish over the years into what it is today. There are really a series of powers that you gain and begin to refine when you enter this path. One of them is the first power we call realizing the essence of yourself is extremely powerful, absolutely and perfectly liberated. It's simply a matter of opening to that natural power that resides within you, the power of source itself, your true nature. And one of the great gifts of this pathway is it opens a taste, points out a real direct experience with that truth of your essential beingness. The second power that we bring forth in this process is a kind of opening to working with specific principles and teachings that help you to open that experience of direct connection to that perfectly liberated essence of your being and that possibility of profound connectivity to the big family of all living things. The third power is the power of transmission, which can come from the human teacher.
How do we know it's aliens? Couldn't that just be military aircraft? They now believe there's one planet for every star in the universe. There are already 8.4 billion artificial intelligences. Who could have built that 10,000 years ago? Where did you find the source for that? Could AI truly become sentient?
For a unique, in-depth, and rational look at these topics with the world's leading experts, check out Beyond Contact on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts. Find us at contactinthedesert.com.